Hello, and welcome to the Creepy Vault, the Witching Hour podcast. I am back. It's been a little while, and I apologize, but I'm excited to do this podcast for you today. And I'll tell you why. Of course, because I love the creepy and unusual and all that kind of stuff, but it is Halloween, and this is going to be a good one. There is some really scary stories I have. I got some stories from the Utah State Hospital in Provo, Utah. Pretty creepy place. It's got a history. I've done some stories about this before, and they were great stories. And I got some more stories from some people that work there, and they're fantastic, very creepy. This hospital opened in 1885. They've had so many incidents and things since then. Now it's better. It's gotten better over the years as technology advances and stuff, but these stories are unsettling and they're creepy, to say the least. There are many ghosts in this hospital, from what it sounds, and I would love to experience that for myself. The empty patient halls at night, the break rooms, the quiet, the stillness, and the ghosts' laughs and tappings, thumpings, things that go bump in the night, all kinds of creepy going on. This podcast is going to be good. Happy Halloween. This is the Halloween Creepy Special 2025. And without any further ado, let's get into it. But actually, first, I must warn you, these are creepy stories. These are true stories, true accounts at the Utah State Hospital of workers and staff that work all hours of the night and have experienced some paranormal phenomenon. And the warning I'm going to give you is one of these stories has some suicide material, which may be disturbing. So you've been warned. Let's get started. So a couple of years ago, there was some northern lights that showed up in Utah, where you could see the northern lights in the Utah skies at a certain time. I don't remember exactly the time and stuff, but I know it was I think a couple years ago. And these northern lights showed up, and the graveyard shift, which consists of about 11 o'clock at night to 6 or 6:30 in the morning at the Utah State Hospital. These staff members, they call them psych techs, stay overnight to watch their patients, which consists of numbers of up to 25 patients at any given time in a unit, they call it. It's a lockdown unit. These patients are disturbed. They are mentally unstable. They can be violent. Self-harmers, all kinds of things. Unpredictable, as you can imagine. And so they experience a lot of things with these patients, but also they experience the paranormal. And that's what we're going to get into. So a couple years ago, the Northern Lights showed up, and just like a full moon, when things go crazy and you hear about the whole full moon, when there's a full moon out, things get wacko. Well, this is what happened with the Northern Lights. So, as the story goes, there's a nurse's station that's enclosed by glass. There's 2 doors on each side. And in front of that nurse's station, there's another desk area where staff usually go, and it's more open. It's a tall desk, and they have little doors on each side, and that's where the patient supplies are. And they kind of sit there, and the phones are there, and they kind of watch the unit from there. And there's patient dorms from each side. There's a right hall and a left hall, and there's a big common area with couches, and it's just like a big dorm, okay? And then when you go outside, there's locked doors, and there's another hallway outside the unit, and there's other doors out there. Well, around midnight, inside the nurse's station, where it's enclosed in glass, there was a thumping noise. It was a bumping noise. It kept on making this consistent noise, kind of like this. I hope you can hear that. So the thumping noise. And everyone was kind of beside themselves at first, and they looked around and they tried to figure out what was going on. It was the middle of the night, right? Like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And they went into the nurse's station and they said, "Hey, are you making that thumping noise? It sounds like someone's hitting against the desk," just to confirm where the noise is coming from. And the nurses said, No, I'm not making any noise. I can hear that too. Where is that coming from?" And they kept on hearing that thump. And they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And they looked around the desk, they looked inside the nurse's unit, inside the enclosed area, because that's kind of where the sound was really coming from. But they couldn't figure it out. And then they realized that it was from the ceiling, up on the ceiling. And these ceilings are tile ceilings, where like a typical hospital, I think easy for maintenance. You can pull out the tile and go up in there and fix things or whatever, but they noticed it was coming from above. And it kept on going and for a while, and then it stopped. And then everyone just kind of relaxed, and minutes went by, and they realized, okay, maybe it was just something coming on, or something normal, facilities or something, kicking on and off. But it was still unusual. The thumping was unusual. So they relaxed, and usually the night shift, from what I've talked to them, they watch movies and they kind of relax it as they're watching patients as well in between. They just kind of catch up on a show or read a book or something at the desk while they do their checks and make sure everything's safe. Well, while they're doing that, and when they relax again, they hear it again. This time it's a little louder. And they're like, that is unusual. There's definitely something going on. We need to find out what this is. And they go in the nurse's station again, and they're looking around outside in the common area and down the halls, and then they hear something. It's a whistling wind sound. Almost like when you're outside and it's really windy. Kind of like when the wind and the vents are caught in between a kind of air pressure area between doors. When you go in a door and there's like a vestibule, like a little area, and then there's another door that goes outside. It's like that wind noise sound that gets caught in there, right? And they go out and they follow that sound. And they go out the doors and into the hallway outside the unit. And to their surprise, they see a door that they don't have keys to. No one has keys to this door. And it's completely open, and the lights are all on. And they look at the door, and they realize it's the mechanical room. It's facilities. It's the facilities room with all the facilities. And there's stairs that go up above the unit. And they're thinking, what in the heck is this? And they are talking to each other, and they're beside themselves, and they said, we didn't see this door open when we came to change of shift. So change of shift is when you start your given shift at the hospital. Psych techs get together with the nurse that's in charge during the shift, and they talk about the patients and how things have been going, and they just have a little meeting, little powwow, like a half hour before their shift starts. And they come in at 10:30, their shift starts at 11, and they're just saying they didn't notice that door open before change of shift. And it was wide open, the lights were all on, and they decided to go up there. So they go up the stairs, they go up above to the utility area, which also connects to the roof. One of the doors up there connects to the roof area and everything of the hospital. And they're walking around and there's nothing. They don't see anything unusual. All the lights are on. They see facilities, big vents, like you would see in a commercial facility like the hospital, big commercial vents and furnaces or what have you. And they're creeped out. And they're just trying to figure out, okay, what was that? We don't know. They go back down the stairs, they turn off all the lights, and they shut the door. They lock it, they go back in to their unit and they sit at their desks and they're a little bit beside themselves and a little bit creeped out, but they're like, okay, we don't know what's going on, but okay. And they called campus police and let them know about it. They have campus police that are security for the hospital, just in case if things get out of hand. They're there to deal with things and help assist. And they have keys for doors and for the whole building. And so they show up and they check it out and they don't know. And anyway, as the night goes on, midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, all the way to 4 in the morning, they hear that same thumping. And this time it gets really loud. Really loud, even louder than that. Just giving you an idea of what it sounds like. And another unit, an adjacent unit, they can hear the thumping. It's so loud they can hear it. And they come over and they come to this other unit and they're like, hey, what's going on? What is that banging noise? We can hear it. It's really loud. What is the deal? And the staff on the other unit that initially heard the thumping noises, they said, we have no idea. We don't know. We called campus police. We tried investigating it. It's been going on for the last few hours. And we don't know where it's coming from, and we don't know what's going on. Anyway, 4 in the morning hits and it stops. It just settles down. It stops. There's no more noises. It discontinues. And the staff were talking about it from both units, and they're thinking, you know what that sounded like? That sounded like almost like a patient hanging from something and bumping into something, almost like they're hanging from a ligature or a rope or something, and their feet are bumping against something as they're hanging and swinging. And it's like this pattern, this boom, as they're swinging, boom. At the other end of a rope, boom, their feet are just dangling. Anyway, a creepy thought, right? They never figured it out, and that was the end of the story. The next story that I'm going to tell you also involves another ghost. This is called the suicide patient ghost, or lack for a better word. So, as I said before, staff, they do checks. They do regular checks. They're called 15-minute checks. And back in the day, I think it was 8 years ago, they would do 15-minute checks throughout the night. And again, this is a graveyard shift. This is from 11 p.m. to 6:30 in the morning, all throughout the night, that this was experienced by staff in this mental hospital. And they're doing checks, and one staff member neglected his checks. He did some of the checks, but there was one particular patient. She was in her 20s. Obviously, I'm not going to say any names to protect the innocent, right? I don't know this individual's name, but it was a female patient, and she was in her room like the other patients, and she wasn't being checked on. And the staff members' checks went by, and they only do it for about an hour, and then they pass it on to another staff member. They trade duties. Every hour they have something different, either at the desk or doing 15-minute checks or what have you. Anyway, they finally check on this female patient in the room, and they find her in her bed with a sheet around her neck tight, and she is not responsive. She used it as a ligature, which is another word for, choking yourself out, using something to choke yourself, to strangle yourself, like a strangulation. And she used the sheet. Sometimes they use sheets. They use whatever they can. Some of these poor patients, they suffer from suicide ideation. And they think about it, and they try to carry it out as best as they can. And anyway, she was unresponsive. They took her to the hospital, and she died at the hospital. She actually died from this. And I'm sure that staff member definitely probably got in big trouble. But anyway, she died, and they actually took her clothes and her belongings. And, they put them away and they cleaned up the room, and it was really sad. It was a horrible incident. It's happened, this kind of stuff happens at mental hospitals. It's part of the job. Sometimes this happens. I think it's more rare now because they have more secure measures and different things that they do to prevent these things. But 8 years ago or however long ago, this did happen. Anyway, I think it was the next day, there was another staff member that was on the unit, and he went to their storage room. And the storage room is a place where they keep patient supplies and supplies for the unit. Toothbrush, toothpaste, brushes. They keep different things that the patients may need, right? Even shoes for them or whatever. And he goes in there to get some supplies, and I think it's the next day after this patient has died. And he opens the door and he looks in, and he is frozen with fear. At the other end of the storage area, and it's a small little storage area, it's got crates filled with belongings on both sides of the walls. There's boxes with extra supplies. Just a small kind of room, hall, storage area. At the other end, there's the patient's clothes that committed suicide. The young lady, she was in her mid-20s. And there's her clothes piled up at the very end. But she's sitting on top of her clothes. Her ghost. It's got to be her ghost because she died the previous day. She's sitting on top of this pile of clothes, and she had hair all the way down past her waist. Almost like The Ring, right? You can picture that, or The Grudge, something like that. And she's sitting on top of her clothes looking at this staff member. And he's just frozen with fear, looking back at her. And he leaves immediately. He is totally creeped out. He's spooked beyond belief. He goes back to the nurse's station, and he reports it. I don't think he told him what he saw. He confided in me, and other staff members were telling ghost stories. But he just went to the nurse's station and he said, "We need to call security right away. Why are the patient's belongings in the storage room? We need to get those out of here." And security came and campus police and removed the clothing later. Well, it didn't end there. Actually, I think weeks later or months later, I don't know, something. That same room that patient strangled herself with a sheet. In that same room, there was a one-to-one watch. Now, one-to-one watch is done by a staff member that watches a patient that may be a self-harmer or may do things that are inappropriate, and they have to be watched and monitored to make sure they're safe and the unit is safe. Well, this foolish staff member on his graveyard shift fell asleep because he figured the patient in that room is asleep, and he fell asleep, but he was abruptly awoken by being strangled. He got up out of his seat, ran to the nurse's station, and he said, "She's trying to strangle me. She's trying to strangle me." And he described that female patient that had died, that she was trying to strangle him. And it just spooked him out beyond belief. So anyway, there was that incident. And then there was another incident, the same staff member that saw the ghost of this patient sitting on top of her own clothes in the storage room. There's a break room in the same unit that they sleep in, and there's a recliner chair. It's just a small break room with lockers, a table. And he turned the lights off to get some sleep, and he laid back in the recliner. And as he's trying to sleep, he feels this slap across his face. And he abruptly wakes up. He's totally surprised, and he hears maniacal laughing of a female. a female's maniacal laugh. And he is spooked. No one's in the room. He's totally spooked. He gets out of there. And to this day, he doesn't go back in that break room. He won't step foot back in that break room. It scared him that bad. There's another incident with a female coworker too, same unit. She was sleeping in the same recliner. And her foot was abruptly smacked. Something smacked her foot. And her alarm was going off at the same time to wake her up from her sleep, from her break. And nobody was in the room. And there's no way that anything would have smacked her foot. It just was really random. Spooked her out. She felt creeped. She hasn't been in the break room since either. And there was another incident, actually off unit, where this same coworker, this female, went down the hall out of the unit. There's a long hall that the patients can go down to. And it's a big cafeteria. They can eat in there. A lot of tables and chairs, windows in there. There's a side area where the cafeteria staff has their break room. And there's like a kitchen area. It connects to their kitchen. And it's a little break room with tables, chairs, and there's windows surrounding it. And there's like candy machines and stuff. And anyway, it's usually always dark in there. And you can just imagine the light, the only light that is in there is illuminating from the machines. So it's kind of eerie, right? You can sit down, but it's quiet. You can get a drink. You can get some water, fill up your water bottle from the pop machine in there. And it's just for staff. It's kind of a little enclosed area. It's kind of nice. Anyway, this female staff member is sitting down just trying to enjoy her break, and she hears a tapping on the glass, like a knocking, like a... And she abruptly looks up and she realizes, she's like, oh, that's just somebody trying to get my attention, and it's dark outside and it's a graveyard shift. And she goes over to the window where it came from. And she peers out. And there's nobody there. There's nobody there. There's no trees nearby. There's no wind outside. There's nothing that would have hit the glass. I mean, there's nothing. There's no animals or anything or anybody in sight. And she was completely creeped out. And realizing this, she left that break room. She went back to her unit and told her coworkers what happened. And they said, what are you doing? Like, you never wander at this time at night down to the eatery or down that hallway or anywhere around there. It's really creepy. This place is known for paranormal things that happen, weird, strange things like that. So if I were you, I wouldn't be wandering around those areas at night. So anyway, that's another story. There's another one that was really creepy. The same staff member, female staff member, a few years ago in 2020, 2021, back when COVID hit, good old COVID, that affected everybody, the hospital, the Utah State Hospital, actually had a checkpoint station, little tiny station that they set up by the end of the road. If you've ever been to the Utah State Hospital, it's really beautiful grounds. There's like a lot of parks nearby. There's a lot of buildings there. There's a big stretch of road that goes all the way up to the hospital. There's different roads that turn left and right. And there's a big sign there at the stretch of road right after the roundabout. And that's where they set up the station for a checkpoint. Because of COVID, they had to make sure no one had COVID and that it wouldn't spread to the hospital more than it already had, right? And they had a checkpoint station there around the clock, even on the graveyard shift. And this particular female staff was sitting in her little checkpoint security station, and she was watching a movie, and she had a little laptop. She set up her little laptop. She's sitting there, and she took a drink that she had. It was a Gatorade drink. And she set it right in front of her laptop where she could see it and she could reach for it if she needed a drink. She's sitting there getting into her movie, and all of a sudden, the Gatorade bottle flings, like just flies from its spot onto the ground, like abruptly flies off the table like somebody grabbed it and threw it. And she's sitting there completely in shock. She looks over at the bottle on the ground, the Gatorade bottle. That's full, mind you, totally full. It's not empty at all. So it's weighted down, and it's still flung off the table. She's looking at it at the ground. And at a young age, she learned that if you show anger and you don't show fear towards the supernatural, the paranormal, then they tend to go away. Whatever is happening tends to stop. So she gets angry and says a few choice swear words and kind of like, get out of here, kind of thing. And what the heck are you doing here? And she looks at the Gatorade bottle on the ground and she goes and picks it up and puts it by her feet this time. And she looks around and there's no wind, there's nobody around. She's by herself. And she goes back to her movie, little shaken up, obviously, but she tries to go back to her movie and just relax again. A few minutes later, the water bottle at her feet flies again from her feet, like someone picked it up and threw it. And she's just totally beside herself. She's shocked. She looks over at the Powerade bottle again, and she's just freaked out at this point. This time she doesn't go to pick it up, but she doesn't do anything. She leaves it where it is. And that's the last incident that happened that night in the shack. Really scary. So there's been a lot of scary things that have happened in this hospital. A lot of creepy things. The last story I'll tell you about the hospital, there's actually a museum that has a lot of the artifacts of this hospital historically, a lot of old pictures of patients and how life used to be back in the 1880s, early 1900s, and so forth until now. Obviously, there's no pictures of patients now, but according to HIPAA, which protects patients' privacy and their personal privacy and everything in their records, if there's a certain date that goes back that far, late 1800s, early 1900s, you can disclose their information and for history purposes or whatever, and you can have pictures of patients. So they do have pictures for the archives in that museum, and it's a creepy museum. It is haunted. I've heard people have stayed there. It used to be the quarters for the doctors or nursing staff, and people have stayed in that museum. But anyway, the story goes that there was a staff member there, the same staff member that experienced the slapping in his face in the break room and saw the ghost in the storage room. He was doing his tour in the museum, and everyone that's new to the hospital, if you're a new staff member, either nurse or psych tech or whatever you are, whatever you're hired as, you go through a museum tour and you get the history of the hospital and you get to see pictures and artifacts and different things. And he's looking at these pictures of patients that are there on the walls of the museum. And, it's disturbing. It's unsettling. They're black and white pictures. They're old pictures. And all of a sudden he sees someone walk by. And he's realizing that the person that walked by was one of the patients in the photos. And he couldn't believe it. And it just really creeped him out. He got a really unsettling feeling. And ever since then, he's always felt dark and weird going to that museum. In fact, I don't know if he has even been there since. But yeah, another creepy experience. And there's actually one more that I almost forgot, and we'll end with this. And this one is creepy. So there's a break room outside of this unit, and this is the same poor guy. This guy, he had a few stories to tell, and it was very interesting talking to him. about these stories, these experiences. Obviously, I don't want to give away anyone's name to protect their privacy as well, and to protect the hospital's privacy, so that's why I'm not giving any names. But this patient, he just right outside his unit, there's a kind of a universal break room for all the units nearby. And you could go in there. It's just a simple door. You go in, there's a bathroom on the right, and then it just opens up to a small break room. There's like a green couch. There's a table with chairs. There's a microwave. There's some old fridges. And you could go in there and relax. And this is the graveyard shift again. Well, actually, he was pulling a double. So he was doing a 16-hour shift. I think he was doing a morning shift and a graveyard shift, I believe. Or no, he was doing an afternoon shift, which goes from 3 p.m. to 11 and then from 11 p.m. to 6:30 in the morning. So anyway, he went in there on his afternoon shift to take his break, and he saw someone sleeping on this green couch. They had a blanket over them. They were just laying there and all comfortable and, nothing unusual. And he went in there to get his food and have his break or grab something real quick. There's some candy machines in there as well. And then he left. And he went and, worked on his unit for a few hours. And then he came back again when his graveyard shift started. And he went in to get some more snacks again for a second shift and take a break or whatever. And he noticed that the same person was laying on that green couch, and they hadn't moved at all. They're in the same position, the blanket over them, laying down on the couch, sleeping, but they never moved. It's like they were a statue, or they were like frozen there on the couch. Because usually when someone sleeps, right, they toss or turn and they move positions, or they're sitting at a different angle or something, or a different position. But they had not moved. They were in the same exact position. Anyway, come to find out that person actually was a nurse. They were in their 40s, and they actually died on that couch. That person had died. And really creepy. Anyway, days later, that same staff member, he decided, that was so creepy experiencing that person was dead on that couch, and he didn't know it. No one else knew it. And because you don't bother someone when they're sleeping, they didn't know. But it was unusual that she never moved positions. Anyway, days later, they took out that couch and everything, and they decided to clean it up after that, obviously. Actually, they didn't take the couch out just yet. They were in the middle of, obviously they removed her, and that was tragic and everything, but they didn't remove the couch just yet. And it was days later, I think, or weeks later. And that same staff member went in to go use the bathroom. And he went in there and obviously shut the door. He was using the bathroom. And he heard some knocking on his door, and that's pretty normal. But it was kind of weird because he didn't hear any doors open, because there's a door outside the bathroom, to get into the break room. So you open that door, and then there's the bathroom and the bathroom door, and then the break room opens up, like I said. But he didn't hear any other doors open up. He just heard this knocking on the bathroom door. And he was the only one in there. When he went in there, he didn't notice anyone else in the break room. And he just went right into the bathroom. And he didn't want to hang out in the break room because of that incident with the girl that had died on the couch days earlier. And it just kind of freaked him out. He said, "I'm in here." And then he heard rustling of the doorknob. And like someone was trying to get in, and it really kind of spooked him. And it was like the middle of the night. This was like during the graveyard shift. No one's around. And he said, "Hey, I'm in here. I'm using the bathroom." And he's just frozen like a deer in headlights. And then it stops, right? And he's just beside himself. He's kind of freaked out. He doesn't hear anything. He realizes, I didn't hear anyone come in. I didn't hear a door open. What's going on? Anyway, he quickly finishes in the bathroom. He kind of hesitant, kind of waits. He opens the door, just a crack, kind of peeks out. Spooked. Doesn't see anybody, and then he quickly just opens it and he goes to leave. And right before he goes out the door that exits the break room, he just glances to his right just to see if anyone's out there. And right there on the couch, he sees that same lady that was asleep, that happened to be dead, right? That died a few days ago, laying in the same position on that couch. And he just left that break room as quick as he could. He never went back, not even to use the bathroom. Anyway, maybe her ghost was still there because of that green couch that she died on. But who knows? He's never been back there since. Soon after that, they removed the green couch, and there's been no more incidents, at least of that nature, of seeing her. There's been plenty more, though. Ghostly incidents, not only in that break room, but other areas of that hospital. So anyway, that is it. Those are all the stories I have for the Halloween special. I hope you enjoyed that. And until next time, stay creeped out, my friends. Have a happy Halloween. Be safe. And we'll see you next time.